G'day, welcome to Navadia. Today I'm going to talk about something very controversial. However, I also want to turn this into a discussion about how we, as a community, can improve and learn from this. In saying that, please be kind in the comments. I want this to be a healthy, open conversation. Please keep to the topic at hand, and any overly toxic or vitriolic threads from both sides of the equation will be deleted. I don't like echo chambers, but if it does become overly nasty and off topic, don't be surprised if I do delete your comments. This is not something I would normally do, but I kind of have a feeling this video might be an exception to the rule. But first, because the YouTube gods are making me sell my soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell too, because you might actually get notifications. Maybe, hopefully. One of the things that I have noticed in my time online is that people don't actually know how to approach controversial topics in a way that is sensitive, respectful, and considerate to the people who have opinions of the opposing side. Some topics, such as climate change, the age of the earth and the universe, evolution, etc., don't have many opposing arguments based in reality, so I don't have any idea how to approach the opposition to the scientific consensus, especially on a platform like Twitter where you have limited characters. Science communicators do their best on these topics, but there's only so much we can do before cognitive dissonance and downright stubbornness kicks in and the conversation stalls. So how do we overcome this problem? So far, philosophers, psychologists, and scientists have not been able to answer that question, but who knows what the future holds? But what about those topics that have valid arguments supporting both sides? This actually happens a lot because nuance is a thing. I want to talk about veganism because this is a perfect case study, but can be applied to other subjects such as religion, abortion, or immigration. First of all, I want to make something very clear. And when I say clear, I mean very clear. If you ignore what I am about to say in the comments, I will delete them because you are strawmanning my position. I am not anti-vegan diet. In fact, on the whole, I support and agree with it. I have many friends who are vegan and I talk with them about it approximately 0% of the time. Except for one friend who tortures me by sending me photos of delicious looking meals. Damn them. I also understand the environmental benefits of veganism, such as lowered greenhouse gas emissions, erosions, etc., etc., etc. I get that. And on the whole, I agree it is one of the best ways to reduce our carbon footprint by going vegan. I also understand it is possible to have a vegan diet that is balanced and healthy. The only supplement you may need is vitamin B12, which you can get through tablets, booster shots from your doctor, or fortified foods. I also understand the ethical position of veganism when it comes to animal cruelty, such as eating something that was once alive, etc. And again, I agree with it. But I do have to tell you I am a meat eater, but I have vegetarian preferences. This is because I have a lifelong history of anemia. I don't think I've ever had ferritin levels higher than the middle of the normal range. I have always been at or below the anemia line. I know there's iron in leafy greens, but there's also a lot of oxalates which inhibits the absorption of minerals, such as iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium. If I have so much trouble absorbing iron when I eat meat, imagine how much trouble I would have absorbing it when I have a diet rich in a chemical that binds iron to itself. To be honest, if it was up to me, I would be vegetarian. Also, yes, I do take iron tablets. Still anemic. I hope you all understand that I am not anti-vegan, nor am I, on the whole, against the diet. But what I am against is the rhetoric spewed at non-vegans by militant vegans. Please understand from now on, if I say the word vegan, I mean the militant ones, not the chilled out ones. For example, vegans use loaded language designed to guilt, shame, belittle, or dismiss non-vegans and their concerns. All you need to do is trawl through vegan social media and you will find very quickly ad hominem attacks towards anyone who doesn't subscribe to their diet. In this tweet by someone called Vegan for Life NZ, they say, "Just because I'm not vegan, that doesn't mean I." Yes, it does. You are not an environmentalist. You are not a social justice advocate. You are not an animal rights activist. You are torturing animals. You are killing animals. You are exploiting animals. End of story. This person is implying that someone who, like me, cannot be healthy due to medical reasons on a plant-based diet is essentially a horrible person. They imply that someone cannot care about animals and still eat them. They imply that eating an animal is tantamount to torture, and the person who eats them went out of their way to ensure this animal died a horrendous death. this cannot be further from the truth. What about people who do things like only buy meat from RSPCA-approved sources, or only buy free-range eggs, or buy really expensive milk that comes from dairy farms that look after their cows? Or people who do meatless Mondays, or go out of their way to reduce their meat consumption to 2 to 3 days a week? I mean, isn't something better than nothing? How, instead of implying that people who consume animal products are complicit in their torture, which of course isn't true, can vegans educate people on the way animals are being treated? Linking unbiased and science-based articles is a start. Removing loaded language from their vocabulary like torture, murderer, heartbreaking, sickening, etc. would also help. Stop attacking people who eat meat and start encouraging them to eat a more plant-based diet. In fact, I've had many people tell me they've gone out of their way to eat a steak after a vegan has said something particularly toxic or horrendous to them. I personally think that is a bit childish, but I definitely understand why they said that. Studies have also shown that if a large percentage of people reduce their meat in their diet, has a greater impact on the reduction of animal cruelty than a small group of people going vegan. Encourage allyship over militancy. Encourage everyone doing a little bit over a tiny group doing everything. It is a lot more effective. Another tactic I have often seen vegans use is accusing people who eat meat of laziness or selfishness. The "you eat meat because it tastes nice" is something I have often heard. Is it selfish to eat meat because it's enjoyable? No. This argument is very weak because a meat eater can very easily say, "You only eat vegetables because it tastes nice." If vegans can dismiss an omnivorous diet using that argument, an omnivore can dismiss a vegan diet for the same reason. A counter-argument usually touted against eating an already living animal for pleasure is that it's immoral. Also ignores the fact that we have evolved to enjoy the taste of meat because of its nutritional benefits. Evolution uses reward pathways in our brain to increase the chance of our species' survival. The fact that meat tastes good is an evolutionary byproduct, and there is nothing wrong with enjoying the flavour of it. The laziness argument is also bad. Preparing a meat meal takes just as much effort as preparing a vegetarian or vegan one. I should know. I'm practically a vegetarian. Meat substitutes are very common where I live. However, I live in a city. For some people who live out in the middle of nowhere, food availability makes being a vegan very difficult. Not just that, processed vegan meat and milk substitutes in these areas are expensive, limited, and sporadic. Not to mention, in some areas, being vegan is downright impossible if you want to have a social life. Also, if you are a single mother with 3 kids and a full-time job, being vegan is going to be extremely difficult without much time to cook. There was a case in 2019 where 3 children were removed from a couple in Sydney because they fed their 20-month-old child a strict raw vegan diet. They narrowly avoided jail for child neglect. This baby was undernourished, looked like a 3-month-old, had rickets and no teeth when she was taken into care. She was successfully treated for malnourishment, but the long-term effects of her vegan diet for the first 20 months of her life are unknown. Her 2 brothers, aged 6 and 4, were both on a strict vegan diet. Links to the case are in the description below. While this is a clear case for neglect, and I'm probably nitpicking here because they were also raw foodists, it doesn't take away the fact that an uninformed adult feeding a child a vegan diet can be genuinely dangerous. I will also talk about the anti-science slant a lot of extreme vegans take a little bit later. Even in adulthood, vegans are prone to deficiencies such as vitamin B12, taurine, magnesium, calcium, and iron. After a long period of denying their body an entire food group, people can become very sick. While yes, you can consume everything that is needed for a healthy diet as a vegan, you have to remember our ancestors have been eating meat for 2.4 million years. To do a vegan diet well, you have to be very strict and well educated in nutrition and under the guidance of doctors and nutritionists. There is always a high risk for malnutrition if you haven't been educated properly on how to eat a balanced vegan diet. This can take years of study and practice. It's not something you can learn over 6 weeks from a food blogger. Granted, veganism is a much better diet than eating meat at least 7 times a week, but it has still removed an entire food group, which nutritionists generally don't support. Just because you can do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. The dedication required to learn how to maintain a vegan diet safely is immense, and people just don't have the time. It's not because they're lazy, it's because they just can't do an entire course on high-level nutrition. People without access to scientific journals, who don't have time to read them, lack critical thinking skills, or frankly, may not be able to understand what they are reading, aren't lazy, it's reality. The animals taste nice, or you're just lazy, is a similar straw man to one atheists get from theists. Oh, you're an atheist because you just want to sin. They inject accusatory statements of intent onto the person without any context of who or what they are. These statements show the accuser has made up their mind about the person, and nothing they say in their defense is valid or reasonable. They're nice catchphrases, but the problem with catchphrases are they don't allow any nuance at all. And if there's anything I've learned over my life is that nothing is ever black and white. If you want to convince someone to listen to your arguments, do not ever accuse them of something without knowing who they are. I'm also looking at you atheists. The number of times I've seen and heard things like, you believe in God because you're just scared, is somewhat disgusting. Stop making broad brush assumptions, especially about people you don't know. All that's going to do is put them offside, make them defensive, shut down the conversation, and eventually one person, usually the accused, will walk away angry and leave both screaming into their echo chamber. If anything, this technique is only there for people's self-congratulations for winning a dishonest argument. So stop it. We all should. Instead, listen to people. Listen to why people do what they do without judgment. Offer suggestions and solutions. Accept that you're not going to see eye to eye on things. Agree you're going to disagree and then ask a very good question. What do you think we can do to get to a common goal? This goes for any potential conflict. I have plenty of theist friends. I don't agree with their assertion that there's a God, but that's only one part of their personality. Their religious convictions are only one side to a multifaceted person, and I'd rather have them by my side fighting for something we both believe in. Trying to convert everyone to your way of thinking is nothing short of hubris, and I personally find it reprehensible. Remove the us versus them narrative that we are all prone to do and humanize people. I often see vegans use information that is completely taken out of context. And when I mean completely, I mean completely out of context. This is a tweet made by John Oberg where he clearly has no idea what he is talking about. This video shows cows on a milking carousel. John Oberg says, "What part of this man-made monstrosity looks natural or humane to you? Dairy cows live lives of confinement and cruelty. Fight this. Ditch dairy and choose #plant-based milk over cow's milk." Ironically, the appeal to nature is often touted by vegans. Also, if you watch the video again, you can see in the top left corner, right at the start, cows calmly entering and leaving the milking carousel. If you look at the body language of the cows, you'll see they are calm and relaxed. None are bucking or straining to get out of where they are being milked. There's no humans pushing them on or off the carousel. There's even an empty spot here, where a cow failed to enter it. You can also look at the body language of the humans too. They, too, aren't stressed. Milking carousels are a part of a new type of dairy farming. It's highly controlled, monitored, and individualized for cows. This system is considered to be quite humane as the cows make their own routine. The cows decide when to get milked and how often they get milked. They walk into the carousels of their own accord. According to one manufacturer's website, a cow using their system is being milked 1 minute less per day. They stand in the carousel for approximately 11 minutes as they get milked, and they walk out into a pasture where they aren't confined. They aren't there all day hooked up like slaves. The reason the stalls are so small is for safety reasons, just like seatbelts in your car. The fact that vegan activists use clear propaganda and misinformation tactics to spread their message really turns people off. I've seen vegans use extreme examples of animal cruelty and paint that to be the norm, i.e., they cherry pick. When non-vegans point out they're wrong, spreading misinformation or propaganda, they get attacked by other vegans for supporting cruelty or other ad hominem attacks. So how can we change this? First of all, check your sources. Double check if the information comes from a reputable source. Read the words being said. Are they full of emotive language? Do they use language that others people who don't agree with them? Are their claims cited? Do they apply to your country? Are the claims linked to somewhere that also has an agenda, or are they from a good quality source? A good example I've linked below is of an article that dispels many myths about the dairy industry. it uses very little loaded language, has linked sources to a variety of reputable journals, admits where there's issues with the dairy farming industry, and also offers solutions. On the other hand, another website which I've linked below is called freefromharm.org, is the exact opposite of a good source. They use loaded language and sources that link back into the website or are biased and non-peer reviewed. They promote books by other vegans or activist groups which are not reliable sources. They only have one solution, which is everyone go vegan, which is not possible, as I've mentioned before. When talking about a controversial subject, get a working idea of what the opposing side's arguments are. Listen to their concerns. Give possible solutions for them. Don't dismiss them. Often, the concerns are legitimate or are rooted in misinformation. If you encounter people who are saying, this isn't possible for me, then listen to them. If someone fact checks you, don't dismiss them as being brainwashed by propaganda, because it's just as likely that you're the one that has been brainwashed. Check your biases. See nuance. I'm going to talk to atheists right now. I have seen a lot of atheists constantly attacking people who are theists. This is not okay. A lot of atheists dismiss the experiences and concern of good people who are also religious. While I have a feeling this attitude is slowly waning, it has caused the atheist community to have a particularly nasty reputation amongst the polytheist community. And frankly, I can see why. Just like militant vegans, militant atheists use very similar tactics such as shaming, ad homing, dismissal, and refusing to listen that gives other, more chilled out and accepting atheists a bad name. This drives wedges between potential friends and allies. If someone decides to burn a candle because their pet died and they put that up on social media, don't tell them their beliefs are idiotic. They're sick of it, and so am I. When I was transitioning from theism to atheism, I remember being told having a pentagram around my neck was bullshit. Even as an atheist, that statement still pisses me off. Tell them their beliefs are bullshit when they use it to discriminate against the GRSM community or advocate for female disempowerment. Most religious people are also fighting for equal rights, and frankly, I'd rather have someone like God is Grey in my camp than John Richards. Another tactic that militant vegans use is to criticize people on the way they live outside of their own diet. This is one of the more distasteful things vegans do, in my opinion. For example, many vegans attack people for having carnivorous pets, such as cats. There is a lot of hypocrisy to this. The majority of vegans become so because they want to reduce animal suffering. Caring for an obligate carnivore properly is reducing animal harm, especially if the animal is a rescue. Telling people that having a pet is abuse is downright incorrect. The idea that animals are better off in the wild is also patently wrong. Captive kept animals have a longer lives for a reason. Yes, animals experience abuse in the wrong hands, but so do children. The vast majority of pet owners do the right thing by their wards. If that includes using the offcuts of already slaughtered animals to feed their carnivorous pets, then so be it. Forcing a cat to have a vegan diet is abuse. Many vegan cats have died an early death due to nutritional deficiencies. So how do I suggest people express their thoughts on other people's lifestyles? Unless someone is abusing something, don't. Is it directly and actively harming anything involved except for the person in power? If the answer is no, stay out of it. There's a meme we've all heard and seen, and it's the variant of the joke, how do you know someone is a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Unfortunately, this joke is based on an issue I have seen over and over and over again, where a militant vegan will take any opportunity to inject their agenda into a discussion. For example, Cosmic Skeptic, who, in the past, I have criticized publicly. I do genuinely think he's a nice guy and wants to do the right thing, but I am also very concerned about his rhetoric. In my opinion, it is dangerous and almost cult-like. The more I see of his stuff, the more he scares me. He's had a lot of criticism over his vegan points of view, and there is a growing negative sentiment amongst our community about his activism. I'm going to bring something up, but first I need to establish a timeline. I released this video in May 2020. In late December 2019, the whole world finally found out that Australia was experiencing catastrophic bushfires that had been burning for at least 6 months beforehand. The final toll of the bushfires ended up being over 18 million hectares of bush burnt, 5,900 buildings destroyed, including 2,779 homes, 34 people died, 1 billion animals killed, and ecologists are still trying to figure out how many species become extinct. To say this was an ecological disaster is somewhat of an understatement. The severities of these bushfires were linked to climate change. Please remember that the bushfires had become very bad at least 3 months before the international mainstream media picked up on them. On January the 7th, 2020, Alex retweeted something. Unfortunately, the original tweet was deleted. It was a person criticizing someone famous, a Kardashian, I think, about how she's selling real mink slippers while also being upset about the animal death toll in Australia, which was estimated to be 500 million at that point. The caption stated, "Kill the rich" or something like that. Frankly, I agree with that attitude. Mink fur is not necessary. Anyway, Alex's response was, "Friendly reminder that the number of animals killed by the Australian fires are killed every day by the meat industry because they taste nice. And it's a lot easier to choose something else on the menu than put out the fires if you're concerned about saving innocent lives." And almost as a postscript, he said, "Plus, everyone wants to talk about global warming until they're reminded that it is catalyzed by their food choices. It is time to change for the sake of ourselves, the animals, and the planet." Yeah, that went down about as well as you would have thought it did. As far as I know, I was the first person in our community to call him out on that, and he was heavily criticized by other people in our community. Rather than recognizing his mistake and apologizing, he dug in his heels and dismissed the criticisms levied at him. He didn't understand there were a lot of bad decisions made by our politicians at the time, where a lot of the damage could have been mitigated. All he knew was Australia was on fire, and he used that connection to global warming to push the vegan diet produces less CO2 and kills less animals argument. I won't go into depth about why I thought his attitude was callous and insensitive, because, well, if you can't see why it is, I honestly don't know what to say to you. But this video is about how best to talk about controversial topics and get your point across when talking to another person who might disagree with you, not an in-depth psychoanalysis. If you see a tragedy that is very loosely and tangentially connected with your agenda, just don't say it at all, especially when people have died, lost their houses, and unique ecosystems have been destroyed. Yes, there was the climate change connection, but even if everyone went vegan, that takes away about 30% of our carbon emissions. While, yes, that's a huge chunk, that means that 70% of our carbon emissions are still being produced. The best way to reduce our impact is to eat less meat, use your car less, and to buy secondhand and only when needed. Citizens demanding better regulation and harsher fines on polluting industries and subsidies for renewable energy is also a way to reduce humanity's carbon footprint. If everyone did that, you'd see a bigger decrease in carbon emissions with less disruptions on the economy and health than if everyone went vegan tomorrow. Overall, I think all I'm saying is just work with people towards a common goal, even if you completely disagree with their opinions. You'd be surprised about how often opposing opinions actually have a point of agreement once you scratch beneath the surface. Again, allyship over militancy. Before I wrap this up, I want to point out a few things I have noticed in the militant vegans community. A lot of them tend to approach people in a similar way evangelicals do, primarily with pathos, with the expectation of rapid change and little consideration for mitigating life factors that might make it harder for someone to take on a fully vegan lifestyle. They proselytize guilt, shame, and use bad analogies such as eating meat is equivalent to rape or having a pet is slavery, and accept nothing but purity to be good enough. When genuine concerns towards the real suffering that people would go through if we all suddenly went vegan arise, they are ignored or dismissed. For example, avocados are associated with drug cartels and deforestation in Mexico. In Vietnam, recovering drug addicts are forced to shell nuts as part of their rehabilitation with little to no compensation. Monoculture crops such as soy and wheat have drastically decreased biodiversity in the area that they are grown. There is a time and a place to eat meat ethically. Ideally, it should be locally grown meat from a small-scale farmer. I've linked an article below that does call for ethical consumption of animals. Another thing I've noticed with militant vegans is the focusing of the suffering of animals at the expense of very real suffering people would undergo with the wholesale adoption of veganism. It is very similar to pro-life proponents where people say, "But the mother is suffering," And the response is almost inevitably flippant dismissal of the mother, or even worse, slut and victim shaming. When pointed out getting rid of the meat and dairy industry would cause untold human suffering, a lot of militant vegans either deflect the concern or shrug and say things like, "Not my problem." I can point to many vegans that do their cause damage. For example, the couple who were raw food vegans who were almost sent to jail for child neglect. Unfortunately, there is a problem with some vegans who are science deniers, and they often go hand in hand with movements like anti-vax or alternative medicine. Raw foodists try to emulate human eating patterns from thousands of years ago. There's a lot of reasons why eating only raw food is a bad idea. Cooking food denatures proteins in exactly the same way digesting food does. By cooking food, it does a lot of the work that would normally needed to be done by our body. That's why the little girl who was removed from her parents due to her diet failed to thrive. Her body was not equipped to process the food that she was receiving. Another reason why eating raw food is a bad idea is because some nutrients become a lot more bioavailable after being cooked. Certain compounds like cyanide gets destroyed by heating, which is why you don't get that green almond flavored from roasted almonds. A lot of vegans say that humans aren't supposed to eat meat, but unfortunately, that's very wrong. Our ancestors have been eating meat for about 2.4 million years, and our digestive tract shows that. If we were herbivores, we would have the four-chambered stomach that you see in other ruminants such as cows, horses, and sheep. We can observe in nature other apes eating meat such as chimpanzees and gorillas. While gorillas are primarily herbivores, they do get some meat protein from carrion and insects. Gorillas also have a different digestive system than we do. Because of these examples of very clear science denial, as well as all the emotional pleading, it is understandable why people who aren't vegans will look at the sources and wonder, is this reliable? Another issue that isn't very commonly talked about is restrictive diets such as vegans may be used as a mask for people who have eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa. Conversations around eating disorders and a potential link to masking by veganism aren't being explored enough in my opinion. I will link the study that floats the question, but I have issues with it because of its small n value. Unfortunately, the word vegan is so thoroughly poisoned by the extremists, I think it would take a lot of PR from the vegan community and a lot of calling out of their bullshit to undo the damage done to that word. And the same with the atheist and feminist movements too. For example, one of the most damaging people for the vegan movement is Vegan Gains. I was only able to listen to one of his videos that was archived on another channel for about 2 or 3 minutes, before I wanted to throw my phone out of my car because it was horrendous. I'm going to link the video in the description below, but every second word is some sort of insult and is very nasty, so please proceed with caution. People like him lead the very toxic part of the vegan culture. However, not all vegans are bad. Unnatural Vegan and Chef Jana are examples of wonderful vegans. Unnatural Vegan uses science-based dietary advice and regularly calls out bad vegan ideals. She is non-judgmental and calm and is an excellent science and vegan communicator. Chef Jana is a cooking channel that gives a lot of vegan recipes. Both women aren't judgmental and are upstanding members of their community. And I come to my last point. It doesn't matter what the subject is. If you are part of a controversial community, it is very important to call out bullshit from within. If left unchecked, extremist rhetoric such as people like Cosmic Skeptic, Vegan Gains, Vegans for Life and NZ, Vegans Against Fascism, whose entire Twitter feed is horrendous, I will link their profile in below if you are a masochist, they will become the poster people for your movement. And of course, Peter. Because fuck Peter. You will lose potential allies and even drive away people in your group. Self-policing is the best way to ensure people are more likely to trust you and in the long term is more likely to keep your movement alive and healthy. Anyway, I hope this hasn't caused too many people to be upset. I know I focused a lot on veganism, but remember this isn't about the diet, it's about how best to talk about controversial subjects. Thank you for listening and don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn. Don't worry. I know I've done the very things that I've mentioned in this video at least at one point in my life. I recognise that. I'm still in the process of learning, along with everyone else. Like you, I make mistakes. I just want to say a special thank you to all of my patrons, especially my $10 Redback Spider patrons, Aided Furball, Lauren Hart, Mary Civitano, Amanda Vogue, Ross Devereux, and Atheist Pastor. I also want to say a very special thank you to my €35 Kanji patron, Osmond Cudmouth. Please be nice in the comments below. I really am begging you for it.